Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walker. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, July 9th, 2020. Had a little trouble getting the mute button to turn off here. Always a good sign to kick things off in the morning. Also, a great thing to do in the morning to pick things up in the middle of a global pandemic and numerous other crises. Remind yourself from time to time that Donald Trump is hopelessly incompetent to the job of President of the United States, or really of anything else, but that's the one he supposedly has right now. And of course he's up this morning and tweeting furiously about any number of things, I am sure. I guess, besides the regular ones where he just blurts stuff out, I think he's up this morning screaming things like prosecutorial misconduct and presidential harassment, and I don't know if anything happened in the various cases against him, although I do understand that the Supreme Court today, once again, everybody will be holding their breath to see whether they come out with their opinion in a couple of the cases pending in which he's a direct party. I think the Mazars case, whether or not we're going to get to see his tax returns and whether or not we're going to get to see financial information from his accounting firms is on the line. All those basic things. I think I did see this morning our friend on Twitter, you'll find him, of course, as Grudging1, and he made the good point this morning. I think that what's at stake in at least some of those cases, at the heart of those multiple cases against Trump, or that Trump brought to try to protect himself from having some of his information revealed, is that the upshot of a Supreme outcome in his favor, or rather against him, would be to say, yeah, the laws actually mean what they say. The laws on the books will remain. We'll have to deal with those things, and people will have to follow them. We'll find out that he is exactly who we thought he was the whole time, and he will have to share information that other candidates have always shared voluntarily. So, we don't make great strides necessarily in seeing this thing happen. But here's how he puts it exactly in his own words here. What's crazy about the SCOTUS case on Trump's taxes is that the harmful result of a ruling against Trump would be, and remember, that's what's being asked here. They're asking the Supreme Court to rule the other way, other than what the law says, because there could be harmful effects against Trump. What are those harmful effects? One, a law already on the books would stay there. And two, Trump would produce something he promised he would produce 100 times, a dozen times, but I'd say probably closer to 100, and that every other candidate does voluntarily. And, that's the big deal. Of course, somebody else replied to him that, the third thing would be that Trump and Republicans would be swept from office. I'm not so sure, but they should be. But, of course, as they point out, if they're dead set on preventing item number 3, then items number 1 and 2 are negotiable. Thanks to Stephen Dangler for pointing that one out. And, likely true. And a good point and something to remember. And, of course, now that I've said it, something to pocket so that I can share it with you in today's roundup. Let's see. So, like I was saying, Trump is angry and tweeting about what exactly? The thing that I just wanted to use as a reminder for everybody is that he's out there tweeting now, and I can't make out exactly what he meant here. He's getting upset about testing again, and the pandemic, and how poorly we're doing, and reiterating his horrible, inept, stupid, incompetent, I don't know what exactly label, all of them, I guess, to hang on it, his insistence that it's the testing that's causing the problems. And he starts out by saying, I'm not certain whether he's trying to say for the 1,000th time or the 100th time, because he's not even up to the task of expressing that clearly. What he has typed here is, for the 1/100th time. That is, for the 1/100 th time. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Was the slash supposed to be a comma, and he was reminding us for the 1100th time? That's possible. I mean, just to be over the top about it, right? But I don't know what this means. For the 1/100th time, the reason we show so many capital C cases, there's no words for how stupid this guy is. For the 1/100th time, the reason we show so many capital C cases, comma, compared to other countries that haven't done nearly as well as we have, comma, whatever he even thinks he means with that, is that our capitals, all capitals, testing is much bigger and better. We have tested 40 million people. By the way, I happened to notice the other day, I can't get through a sentence of his without having to digress, of course, but I happened to notice on the worldometers here that, it has made very little difference to the way we all deal with the situation, but the Chinese have, and who knows whether you can trust their information, have blown past everybody with the total number of tests administered. I guess the U.S. still gets to cling to the number one spot. Well, no, they don't really. But I guess maybe a higher rank than China for tests per million population, tests per capita. But China has blown past everybody in the number of tests that they've performed. We have not quite cleared 40 million, though Trump is, prematurely claiming we're 500,000 plus away from 40 million. I guess you could fudge at the 40 million number level. But anyway, the Chinese have done more than twice that. They are over 90 million tests. Of course, their population is 1.4 billion, and so it makes less of a dent. It's 62,814 tests per million in population, whereas the United States has done 119,267 per million. But anyway, Trump says we've tested 40 million people. We haven't, of course. We've performed 40 million tests, but a million of them have been on him. That's another issue. Once again, my phone ringing, but not where it counts. I cannot understand this. And let me see. I probably can't call him until why was this happening over and over? All right, well, I'll send him a note and tell him to try again. This is ridiculous. Okay, and I can't send him the note because it still thinks it's ringing on this computer, which it isn't. Boy, this is fun. Okay, let's see. Anyway, we'll have him try again. And so Trump was saying we have tested 40 million people. If we did 20 million instead, cases would be half, etc., not reported. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. All right. I'll try giving him a call. So now that no, he's going to do it too. Okay. All right. Hey, good morning, Greg. I guess we've got a situation here where the regular show computer just refuses to hear the first call. I don't know. Maybe you can you call and then hang up immediately and then call again. Maybe that would work. All right. Let's see. Can I even hear you? No, I can't. That's going to give us another problem.
How about now?
Now I do. Oh, now I think I figured out that second problem.
Hey, we got a situation here.
Yeah. Oh, maybe that's what.
Joey, every time. Bring it in. We got a situation here. Call the boss.
Right. I don't know what's going on with this. I mean, I wake the computer up a good 40 minutes before the show, and I run everything to make sure everything's working. And apparently that doesn't work as a way to find out whether everything's working. I guess I got to call. Maybe I should do a Skype test call first thing in the morning.
Yeah,
and have it come out that way. All right. Well, it's back to the drawing board. And yes, it is Skype, I think, that is eventually going to be the one that gets phased out. And maybe that's what they're doing. Every 100th call, just nothing happens.
Yeah. Well, look, if you did more testing.
Yes, right. That's true.
What you'd find is that only 1 out of 100 of these calls actually goes through.
Well, I probably would find that to be the case, and I wouldn't blame it on the testing though. But yeah, I mean, I did have somebody ask again, and I just used it as a reminder to launch my wife's favorite campaign here, which is whenever Trump does something insufferably stupid and dangerous like this, I use this as an opportunity to remember, to remind everybody so that we can normalize it now, so that nobody's shocked and gasping for breath when I suggest this when the time comes. But there simply cannot be, on a taxpayer dime or any other way, allowed a state funeral for Donald J. Trump. That would be a huge insult to the country. And right now, I think if we just sprung it on people, people would say, but he's president of the United States. Well, he may have plenty of time left. We may have time to get used to this. Or it may be right around the corner. I don't know. But we need to get people used to the idea of we cannot be spending America's time or money honoring this person as having rendered honorable service to the country when he dies. And this is just one example of it. And the whole of yesterday would be another example of it, as we got ourselves tied up in knots. And we'll continue to do it because we continue to hear that there has to be sacrifice at the altar for the pandemic. And by God, Trump isn't going to let it be him. So it's going to be your kids and their teachers.
Which is a great message. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, your grandmother wasn't enough. Now it's got to be your kids.
Yeah, well, this is how you win suburban moms. You tell them, I'm going to murder your children,
satisfied.
and your children's teachers, the ones you send little treats for at the end of the year and cards on Teacher Appreciation Day, etc. We're going to kill them all. And
Well, you know,
that
it's
will
funny
help you
because
feel
Twitter
secure.
and Google especially tracks these things. And apparently on Google, there was a big spike for child sacrifice. Everybody was looking it up. Like, what's that mean exactly?
What is that exactly about? Oh, murdering the children. Yeah. Well, he seems to think, they actually do think at Team Trump that this is a winning message. This is how to reverse the
Well, that's the
hemorrhaging
thing.
among
You know,
suburban
it's funny
moms.
you should say that because I'm watching this and I'm trying to figure out, you know, school is such a fraught thing. It's so personal with everybody. It's such a hot button issue, right?
Yes.
I mean, I could tell you back in the day when I was actually working, I helped sit on a panel with a local school board and parents and teachers about an issue about some asbestos being found in the local school.
Yeah, okay.
And we had EPA
Trigger
there,
alarm
and
bells.
we had, you know, state officials in terms of
together a
what
panel
was
of
going on.
experts.
And I was there as the pulmonary doc.
Yeah.
And it was a small issue, and it was easily taken care of, and it's you know not that big a deal, and it could be mitigated, and it was. But the parents, to a certain extent, and the teachers, to a much greater extent,
Yes.
were absolutely up in arms about it. And the idea that you
Dangerous
could basically
substance.
say to the teachers, look, there's this threat here. The kids come and go. They're exposed to asbestos. Let's say there's a single tile in a single room, and it's an asbestos tile, and it got loose, and you're not supposed to touch those things, and everybody's got to wear spacesuits. We know about spacesuits now, hazmat stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the kids, you know, go through the classroom, and maybe they stay in the school for 3 years, and it's been loose for a few years, and then they're gone. But the teachers stay in that classroom for 20 years.
Yeah.
The teacher exposure is way bigger than children exposure. And the parents did not know and needed to be told by a medical professional, you're not going to see illness in your kids.
Yes. Well, right.
I mean, asbestos
So,
is one of those
well,
things that even
we
if
hope
you're
not
exposed
anyway.
for a certain amount of time, it's going to bother you in 20 years.
Yes. It's not good. You want to get rid of it.
But you can't be up in arms because, oh, this is terrible. That's why my kid was sick all this year.
Oh, okay. Well,
No,
It's
that's
fine to
actually
set
not
them
how it
straight
works.
on
This
that.
is how it works. It's a big deal. It needs to be taken care of, but not in the way that you think. No, it didn't make him sick for a month. That was mono. That's a virus. This is flu. And this is totally different things. But I'm saying that the reaction from the community, absolutely emotional and, you know,
yeah, well,
over
that's
the
a
top.
scary word. We're told that's a super dangerous substance.
Right. And then, you know, one of the
true,
parents
but-
came in with one of those, you know, double filter that makes you look like an insect and says, I get exposed to asbestos at work and I have to wear this thing for 8 hours a day in my job. And how can you tell me it's not dangerous? Because I know it's dangerous at work. Well, the amount of exposure that you get is like 1,000 times the amount that this kid is getting.
Yes.
And, you know, and you're going to be doing it every day for your 20 years. And so it's a totally different issue.
Right.
But,
Well,
you know, thanks for coming. And it's a really pretty mask.
be nice.
But it's not logical at that point.
No. It's the plutonium tiles you have to worry about.
Exactly. And so what happens is that the entire community says, well, I don't want any of this. I don't care what you say.
Right.
I know you're telling me it's safe. All right, I'll buy that it's safe for the kids, maybe. Just fix it. And the teachers are saying, I'm not even buying that.
Yeah, well,
You're asking me to go back into that classroom with asbestos and be exposed every day for the 20 years. I'm not doing it. And that's that. Now we have this. And so somehow or other, the Trump administration thinks that they can just say, okay, let's have Betsy DeVos reassure all of the parents in the country and teachers after having Mike Pence lie about everything is fine in Arizona and Texas, it's all getting better, and Debbie Burke supporting that and coming out and lying, and you know they're lying. And then that's the setup for Betsy DeVos to come out and say, well, now that we know that everything's under control, it's fine to open the schools, so that's what we're going to do. And it's going to be every school in the country, and you don't have a choice about it, and just do what we say. And I'm having trouble figuring out whether they're stupid because they thought that was a good idea, or they're stupid because they think it's going to work. I mean, what's the dumber point there? Of course it's not going to work. No parent is going to look at this and say, I want to send my kid to school so badly, I don't even care if it's safe.
Yeah,
that's not how it works in real life.
I can't. No, I don't know. I did see somebody guess that possibly Melania was complaining to him about Barron not being able to go to school, or that she wanted him out of the, I don't know, she wanted him out of the house or whatever.
Just Trump, wanted but to, that's got not that he listens to her, but not to even talks to her.
I'm not certain that has a lot of sway.
Right. Mark Murray was on Twitter yesterday saying that basically the same thing I was. Trump is making the same mistake with schools that he did when he called for the U.S. economy to reopen last spring. He's not putting safety first, and we saw how that played out with the spike in cases in the Sun Belt. I think we mentioned that tweet yesterday on the show. But, you know, it's just gotten so much bigger than that. And then what happens is they start pulling in CDC and AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, to try to make their political points, politicizing those two groups even more so than they are. On CDC's side, CDC said something that was absolutely so terrible that Trump said, we're not going to pay any attention to it. And Robert Redfield in the same conference said, well, obviously we didn't mean to say what we said, and you shouldn't be listening to what we said. We're going to change it because Trump's not happy with it, so we're going to change everything. And what is it they're going to change? You go back and read, and none of these people have, you go back and read the actual CDC guidelines. Let me read you what got them so upset.
Good. I need to have those guidelines.
I sent them to you. Promoting behaviors that reduce spread. Schools may consider implementing several strategies to encourage behaviors that reduce the spread of COVID-19, staying home when appropriate.
Oh.
Also, you should wash your hands. I mean,
yes.
Which one are they getting upset at? Staying home where appropriate. They've decided that in order for Trump to get reelected, the economy has to open. The only way the economy opens is if people sacrifice their kids so that they can go to work and be productive. And so anybody who tells you that it's okay to stay home where appropriate must be subverting the economy and therefore subverting Trump's election. Therefore, you can't listen to them and they have to be destroyed. And that's the approach he's taking here. The only thing that CDC said that he's upset about is that it's okay to stay home and these hybrid things that like New York City is doing. You can't do that. Everybody has to completely open because we said so. Yeah. And so they had a hissy fit about it. And they came out with all this bogus lying to try to convince people that that's a good idea, which of course won't work because nobody's going to take that seriously. But what CDC said was so mild that the problem was that it wasn't stronger and they didn't say it soon enough.
Yeah.
And they're going to take it and say, you're right, we have a problem with CDC. Let's change it so that they don't say anything at all.
Yeah. I'm wondering, how much of this is aimed at, destroying the ability of CDC to do anything. And I also, with Betsy DeVos in charge of Department of Education, it's hard not to, right? It's hard not to imagine that they're saying, worst thing that happens is it's an unmitigated disaster and tens or hundreds of thousands of school teachers and school kids die in America's public schools, at which point we say, see, America's public schools are terrible. We need to abolish them and give us tax credits to send our kids to
I love
our
this.
schools.
I get that as a parent, you're not totally comfortable with Marquis de Sade being in charge of this progress of opening the schools. So instead, we're going to give it to Cruella de Vil. She'll do it.
Yes. Well, we're against, hereditary titles, so it's better to have Cruella do it.
But that's the CDC. So now the CDC which has completely lost their voice, for some reason has agreed to this. We don't know that they've agreed to it. We know Redfield's agreed to it, and he's the head of the CDC, but we also know that he's a political appointee who should have quit and disgraced months ago. So I don't know where that's going.
Right.
And then they turn around and say, yeah, but the AAP says that we're right. And what does the AAP say exactly? Let me read you from the AAP.
This is like the mask thing. They took
Any school reentry policy should consider the following key principles. And this is another thing people haven't read. But this is the key thing. It comes first.
Okay.
School policies must be flexible and nimble in responding to new information, and with administrators who must be willing to refine approaches when specific policies are not working. And then here's the key thing. It is critically important to develop strategies that can be revised and adapted depending on the level of viral transmission in the school and throughout the community. I'm saying that slow so even Trump can get it. Everything the AAP then says is based on having low viral load in the community. If you don't have that, you cannot open.
Right. And they just kind of blow past it and say,
just blow past it and say, well, look at all the other things. They say it's important to go to school, and therefore I agree with AAP.
Yeah. I guess if somebody where somebody will insist, well, we don't have low viral load, they say, yes, we do. Things are looking better. Things improved so much yesterday. There's nothing in Texas. And by the way, we're
canceling all the testing.
Yeah. Right. They have not yet done that. They're bragging on how much we've done. But if we had done less, we would know even less about how many people.
So they have this bifurcated thought process, which says herd immunity is good, and so just let it happen, let it rip. We can't do anything about it anyway. It's too late. And by the way, we really need to open the schools and everything else, including the economy. Go to bars, spend a lot of money.
Tattoos. Don't forget
we'll even consider paying you to go on vacation. We're just so into making sure the economy works because you got to come to my hotels. And we'll just give people a lot of money to kill themselves because it's going to help my election.
Yeah, I don't know. That's all there is to it, and
I'm just not so sure that that's going to go over well with the public. I'm just saying.
Yeah, maybe not. And it might take some more death or whatever to convince them. I'm sure there's a segment of the population that believes it, but it is interesting. Wouldn't it be? It would be awful if, for the first time, you were actually able to convince the vast majority of the public that there was no real danger just by waving your hands and saying, no. No one ever believes that from the government.
No. And in fact, one of the tenets of risk communication from the government when it comes to these sorts of policies is that you have to be transparent, you have to tell the truth, let the experts lead, and once you lose your credibility, you can't get it back. All of those things have been done wrong by this administration from the beginning. You know that because I rant every time they have one of these task force press conferences because they do everything wrong, including having it start with Pence. As soon as you do that, you lose credibility for everything else. And then Birx comes in and then loses her credibility. Fauci wasn't even allowed at this because I think he would have said, yeah, but at the same time, we're having a path to 100,000 cases a day, and states that aren't in good shape should close down. They didn't want to hear that, so they didn't have him here.
Right. No more of that.
And he did say that yesterday.
Yeah, he's the only one that I guess continues to dare Trump to fire him, and I guess, I don't know, the longer Trump let him linger, the harder it was going to be to fire the guy.
Right, and that's where it is right now. So, basically what happened is that every parent in America has become upset and indignant and somewhat furious about this. You read, there's a Facebook one going around, but I'm sure this is one of many. It doesn't even have to be read in literal form so that I can quote it accurately. The gist of it was, look, you're asking us to go to school, and I don't mind buying supplies for the kids, and I don't mind getting used to the fact that I have a closet big enough to hide the kids in. That's part of my job now.
Oh, yes.
But now you're asking me to go in and basically put my life on the line with no money, no support, and no insurance, no assurance it's going to work.
That is
true. So if you want the schools to open up, they don't have the money to do this properly. They don't have the money to do what CDC and AAP suggest in terms of distancing and all this sort of stuff. And where's that money supposed to come from that they're supposed to do this? And who are the people that are supposed to do this? Every single guidance And I'm a pediatrician, right?
Right.
And I'm a member of the
say
AAP. And I have to say, CDC at least is a little bit more tuned into the politics that AAP is. CDC knew that if they said certain things, they'd get shut down, so they didn't say it. That's one kind of cowardice. The AAP is just tone deaf. They had no idea that their attempt at straight science was going to be taken and used by politicians and twisted. And they didn't plan for it, and they got caught blindsided. And now, in retrospect, it looks foolish, stupid, and naive.
Yeah. It's not that they said incorrect things. It's that they didn't read the room correctly and understand that saying the correct things,
right.
Without, all sorts of cautionary language first. And even then, if you did it, they wouldn't cherry pick the part that says, well, if there's no virus, it's safe to go to school. They just said it was safe to go to school. No, you missed the whole if there's no virus thing. That's okay. We forgot the whole regulated militia thing. That didn't bother anybody.
Right. And further, as the teachers point out, it's great to take the kids under consideration. It's, of course, the first thing. But the second thing is all the other adults in the school.
Yeah.
Okay? I have to remind you, I'm from Newtown. When 26 people got shot, it was 20 kids and 6 adults. Yeah. There are adults in the school who are at risk in various and sundry situations.
They're supposed to be running it. Yes.
So the idea that, okay, you can send your kids to school because there's no adults in the school is delusional.
And also not a great idea. I mean, I thought they were supposed to learn from somebody.
Especially the younger you are.
Yeah.
So any school policy has to account for the fact that there are adults in the school, and how does this cover the adults in the school? And if you say, well, it hasn't because I haven't thought about that, then the teachers are going to say, okay, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. And then what do you send them to? I don't know. If there's a teacher strike, where do they go?
I can't believe that rant took us all the way to the music, but it did.
Yeah, I can believe it. It's on the minds of everyone in America. I listened into a long conference call about that yesterday. We can continue with this, honestly. There's a good 16 hours in here. We'll be right back.
Well, good.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show for the 100th time, or whatever it is that the president was saying, or still on with Greg, because there's more to rant about.
1 out of 100 times we welcome you to the show.
Right, that's true. And one out of 100 times I can't welcome Greg to the show until he calls back a second time. 2 out of 100 times it'll work, but not 1. All right. Speaking of the back to school thing, I did see interesting memes beginning to circulate as well, including this one here. That says, remember, it's safe for your kids to go back to school, but it's too dangerous for Paul Manafort to stay in prison. So
yeah, in fact, somebody actually asked him. I think it was Brian Karem, the guy who got in trouble and had his pass pulled.
Yes.
Asked that question of Kayleigh McEnany, who just turned around and walked out on him, didn't answer.
Yep, I got no answer for that one. Michael Cohen is out of jail because too much coronavirus in there, too dangerous. Paul Manafort out of jail because dangerous, too much coronavirus in there. Your kids, your teachers going back because there's no coronavirus. Okay, that's the literal logic of, imagine saying, "Whew, I finally have secured my re-election as president of the United States" on that.
Right.
But, he paints his face orange. I keep reminding everybody, it's right in front of everybody. We're always like, oh, does he really believe that? I don't know. He says it 100 times, and people say, you can't really mean that, right? I do. No, I don't know what to write. He said he does, but I can't write that down because that's too stupid.
Right. So let me read you a little bit of a thread and also give you a good article. The good article comes from Science.
I love Science
magazine.
Oh,
everybody loves science.
I
right?
love
Science
magazines as well, and clips. Yeah.
School openings across the globe suggest ways to keep people safe, and that includes this whole bubble idea. If somebody in your class gets sick, the whole class is then isolated, but you stay together as a class so that that's the only group that gets isolated. Everybody else is okay, in theory.
Yeah, we don't have
and then if another class gets it, well, then they have to isolate. You know, if there's a lot in your community, what's going to happen is that every one of those bubbles will isolate, and then your school is closed. So that's really kind of the point here.
Right.
But
like
this is
saying,
Carl
virus
Bergstrom,
makes the choice,
who works at the University of Washington, and says it's heartbreaking to watch CDC Director Robert Redfield turn a great public health institution, CDC.gov, into a political propaganda tool. I feel dreadful for the thousands of talented, devoted professionals under his direction. Today, Trump tweets this: I disagree with CDC.gov on their very tough and expensive guidelines for opening schools, which I just read to you. While they want them open, they're asking schools to do very impractical things like, be more than 6 feet apart and wash your hands. I will be meeting with them.
Oh, boy.
In response, CDC Director Redfield undermined his own agency's position, promising to go back and issue new politically expedient recommendations. This is the exact opposite of public health leadership.
Yes.
Again, that's why I'm so upset and in a ranty mood. The president said today, we just don't want the guidance to be too tough, Pence said at a White House coronavirus task force briefing at the Department of Education. CDC Director Robert Redfield stressed the agency guidelines were not requirements. Well, Redfield said, I think maybe I wish you would wear masks. I hope that you wash your hands. I mean, I don't know what he's referring to here, but, guy doesn't come out and say, look, this is what we have to do, which is what people are looking for.
Yeah.
It would personally be very disappointing to me, and I know my agency, if we saw that individuals were using these guidelines as a rationale for not reopening our schools. Well, if you don't follow the guidelines, the schools can't reopen, you dummy.
Yeah. I believe me, I can't. All right, I'll let you go on. I'm sorry. Are we reading a thread here from Twitter?
Carl Bergstrom. Yeah, let me give it to you.
Yeah, all right. I just opened the Science Mag thing, but I didn't see what you're...
Sorry. I got so intent on getting angry that I didn't even give you the thread.
Now I can be angry,
So in
too.
response, Redfield undermined his own agency's position, promising to go back and issue expedient recommendations. That would be craven cowardice from any agency director, but from the CDC director with thousands of lives at stake, this obsequiousness, servility is criminal. This is the same man who lectured us on personal responsibility 3 days ago when CDC Director Robert Redfield says that we're all needing to take the personal responsibility to slow transmission of COVID-19. He's right.
Yes.
I'm going to wear a mask in public, said Carl Bergstrom. I have 3 suggestions for what he can do.
Okay.
Now, if you believe a word that you've said, CDC Director Redfield, take personal responsibility for what you're doing and for the recommendations you're issuing. Stand behind your agency. Stand up for American lives and stop serving as a political tool. Yeah. And then CDC Director Redfield needs to learn how to lie while keeping his eyes open. and Carl Bergstrom refers to that and said, this video, if one can stand to watch it, speaks volumes about Redfield's character.
Huh.
Now, what were these unacceptably stringent guidelines? They were that the schools may consider
the regular ones
promoting behaviors that reduce spread.
Okay.
Stay home when appropriate. I highlighted that one for you. Educate staff and families about when they or their children should stay home and when they can return to school. Washing your hands, wearing a mask, providing soap, posting signs, opening windows as possible, spacing desks where feasible. Install partitions. Okay, that one involves significant effort and expense. And put tape on the floor.
That does not.
In other words, physical barriers and guides.
Yeah. Okay.
Close communal spaces if possible. Surge individually placed plated meals or have children bring food from home. Protect high-risk individuals. Follow the effing law. Be aware of local or state regulatory agency policies related to group gatherings to determine if events can be held. Follow the effing law, says Carl Bergstrom, academic, and so on. Remember, these aren't mandates. They're not requirements. They're not regulations. They're not even things that schools need to consider. These minimal actions are those that the CDC thinks schools may consider. So my remaining question at this point is how, Director Redfield, do you even begin to water these guidelines down further without going full homeopathy on us?
Wash one hand.
So he's as upset as I am. He's just
it's pretty crazy.
More articulate about it.
And again, we're in a situation, and I think about Redfield, like, what's the point, say, of remaining CDC director if you can't give accurate medical guidance to people on how to handle a pandemic? Like, is the salary that great? I don't think so. It's a public office,
Right.
It can't pay that much. Surely you could do a lot better in the private sector than that. You can't help people. You're not making a lot of money. And I don't know. I mean, presumably they don't have a hostage from his family, but maybe
I don't know.
that's
You
it.
never know. So Aaron E. Carroll, who is a physician, pediatrician, economist, researcher, policy wonk, and the upshot
Middle name
in
is
the
he?
New York Times, physician to talk about the economics of things that have to do with medicine, says, we want schools to open safely. We know what we need to do, that including a real testing infrastructure are necessary. We still don't have it, and schools can't afford it without help. This isn't a hot take or an op-ed. It's what every expert has known. Simply shut down schools in March, right?
Yeah.
If you want schools to get prepared, you have to decrease the amount of virus in your community, and you have to fund the schools to do the things like plexiglass that are going to cost money, or at least buy hand sanitizer. And the schools don't have any money, so they're not able to do these things.
Yeah.
And so they're not ready to open. It's
They
that
would tell
simple.
parents to send hand sanitizer, I guess. That's usually the thing that they do now.
Well, that's one of the things the teacher mentioned. We can get the hand sanitizer because the parents will send it in because the parents are great, but
Now that you can buy it again.
they can't send in plexiglass.
Not as easily, not as
And,
widely available.
they can't support the teachers when, you need to say, okay, the community viral load is too high and we can't be there.
Yeah. But still, I can send tissues. And
Yeah,
maybe
well,
hand sanitizer if it doesn't accidentally, quote unquote, have methyl alcohol in it, which was increasingly becoming a problem somehow. I don't know how we let that one go, but.
Right. So
yeah.
yesterday, Tony Fauci was interviewed, and he said
Yes.
a lot of things. One of the things he
Sure.
said is, if you're not doing well, maybe you should think about shutting down. That's another message Trump didn't want to hear, and that's why he wasn't at that,
Right.
task force. And this is from USA Today. Fauci says states need to address problems with COVID-19 response. Quote, if you don't admit it, you can't correct it.
Yeah,
End quote.
well,
And that's another reason. They didn't want him saying that at the press conference.
no. How awful. And so he didn't. Yeah,
So
there's
he
a lot
didn't,
of things
and it wasn't
people didn't
said,
want
but he
to
said
say
it
at
elsewhere.
press conferences. Okay.
Meanwhile,
when else would
reality
they do? That's
is
good. I'm
what
glad he
it
can do
is. What do I mean by that? Texas Republican Party's Houston convention. Remember, the GOP in Texas was going to meet in person anyway?
The state convention, yes.
Well, Houston canceled it.
Yeah, that was probably a bad choice for where to hold it.
Well, they wanted to do it anyway. I think they're going to wind up suing Houston over this.
Oh,
but
good. That's
the
worth
fact
their
is
time.
that the state officials said this is such a stupid idea that it's not doable.
Yeah.
And since you guys are too stupid to shut yourselves down, we're going to do it for you.
Yeah, because you're going to leave this disease behind, and you're going to take it back to wherever you're from. That is astounding. I mean, when I saw the Texas governor's masking order, and
Right.
he had that escape clause for places where there's really no viral prevalence, if that's the right term, any county with fewer than 20 cases, they said, didn't have to enforce nobody has to enforce it, but nobody had to even have the masking requirement. And I thought, well, that sounds dumb. How many places are there? And it turns out there's like literally almost 100 counties where they don't have that much virus. There's a lot of counties and a lot of empty space in Texas. And it's odd that they wouldn't say, let's have the convention where there's none and there would be no masking requirement. Instead, they said, let's go to the worst possible place and bring people from places where there's no virus into the viral hotspot and then send them home so that they'll all have to wear masks within a couple weeks. Why not? They have some weird names for counties in Texas, and why not? Lonely Jackal County or whatever the hell. But, I'm sure there's a Super 8 motel, and they could all have a great time there. Rent the whole thing. I know it won't fit all of them, but say, well, it's impractical. There's not enough room for them to all stay there. Well, it's impractical to come to the hot spot of the virus and get sick and die. That's actually less practical.
Yep.
Take 2 motels and bring sleep in your pickup truck. Don't you all have those? I think you'd all be proud to do that. Sleep under your giant hats. All right.
Right.
This is all
Anyway,
very,
so let's turn a little bit to politics. I think
Yes.
we've said enough
I'm
about the school
insulting
stuff.
too
That'll
many
sort
poor
itself out.
Texans.
Just like the virus exploding in Texas and Arizona and Florida is going to push things. I mean, the point about shutting down the GOP convention in Houston is that the virus doesn't care and events are going to outweigh politics and campaigns every single time. So if you think that there's going to be a GOP national convention in Jacksonville, good luck. I'm telling you, there won't be, and not because I think they're going to be smart enough to shut it down. It's going to get shut down for them.
Yes, we're not here for you.
Right? We already have all the senior senators, which is basically all of them, just about all of them, refusing to go.
Right. Well,
You know,
that could be.
Charles Grassley started it, but I think there's at least 5 Republican senators who said, "Thank you very much, I'm not going."
Yeah, I guess also senators at the age of Grassley and others know if I fly to Florida, that's it. Like, that's God's waiting room. If I go to Florida voluntarily, I'm never leaving. I'm just going to stay.
I'll get a
until I
one-way
die.
ticket.
Yeah, you might as well, honestly, and buy a burial
save money.
plot while you're online. Okay.
So G. Elliott Morris is looking at the state of things. We said the other day that the Cook Political Report is basically saying if the election were held today, Joe Biden wins. And Stu Rothenberg is saying it's been likely Biden for a while.
Okay.
G. Elliott Morris has some interesting stuff from the Economist YouGov polls that came out yesterday.
All right.
He says, I see a lot of pundits making the same mistake now that they made after 2018, ignoring rural voters.
Oh, are they? Okay.
In 2016, Clinton was up 21 points with urban voters. And in the Economist YouGov polls, that's what he's using, Biden is up 22. So in the urban areas, Biden picked up a point compared to 2016.
Okay.
In the suburban voters, Clinton was up 4 and Biden's up 10. So Biden picked up 6 points over Clinton compared to 2016. Another subtext message here, this is not 2016.
Okay.
In the rural voters, Trump was up 18 in 2016, but now he's only up 11 or plus 7. In other words, Biden has gained more with rural voters than he has with suburban or urban voters compared to 2016.
Okay.
So for those of you who said, well, those people will never change their mind, those people, whenever you're saying those people and these people, step back and say, okay, what I'm about to say is probably wrong.
Right. Like the thing about giant hats in Texas. That was wrong of me.
So it turns out that Biden's making inroads with what you would think of as Trump voters.
Oh.
And therefore, there are people that will change their mind. There are persuadable voters. Biden is probably the person as Mr. Generic Democrat who could do that. And he's doing it.
Oh. Well, a lot of people thought that wasn't going to happen.
Right. G. Elliott Morris says, I believe this tendency to overlook rural voters probably comes from the myriad of media biases that blinds reporters, analysts, and commentators to small-town America's influence over politics. I would have thought they fixed that after 2016. Rural voters make up only slightly fewer voters than suburban ones do.
Okay.
So
I would have thought more.
narratives about U.S. politics are disproportionately stacked against rural voters, and it causes analysts to misdiagnose things, like Trump losing is all about suburbanites who dislike him, when a lot of rural voters dislike him too.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Doesn't look like it when you watch the television.
And that's why, I always like to see what's going on with evangelicals and non-evangelicals. That's another way to slice it. But, if you look at the numbers long enough, you start to get certain trends and you start to get certain ideas. I mean, the fact of the matter is Biden is still up by 10. And as Stu Rothenberg said the other day, it's a long way for the election, but it's not really a long way for the election.
Okay. Yeah, well.
He put it differently. The day before the election, people are going to say it's a long way before the election. Okay. But a lot of this is baked in. In fact, the Cook Report is saying that it's getting to the point where Republican analysts and behind-the-scenes people who won't be quoted are saying, it's just about baked in at this point.
Well, they won't be quoted. We can't believe that, can we?
Right.
All right. Well, that's what Trump
Well,
says.
they want to work again.
They made it up. Yeah. All right, and let's see. So was this? So it's G. Elliott Morris, and where was he saying this? Is this the?
This is on Twitter too.
Twitter
so
also?
I don't
Okay.
have a pundit roundup today. It's Thursday, so I can't just point you to that. So I actually have to do the work.
Yeah, well,
For those of you playing along at home, what
G. Elliott
happened is I
Morris
got to
and
this like
Stu
1 minute
Rothenberg.
before I was supposed to go on, so I didn't send any of this stuff to David in advance, which I like to do so you could read it.
Yeah,
But
I'll
you
listen.
know, in that circumstance, I'll tell him, look, I'll just send you this stuff as we go along, and then as I speak, I forget to send it. And
And I'm like
David's
taking
subtly
notes.
reminding me so
G.
that you
Elliott
folks
Morris,
at home don't
Stu
realize this isn't completely
Rothenberg.
smooth.
Right. So we did that, the Rothenberg stuff. Okay. Well, it's tough. One of these days, maybe I ought to do a survey like, okay, if all the work that we do about providing the links to the things that we're talking about, do you guys read those? Does that matter? Do you guys care? Can we just...
Nobody reads links. We're bloggers, David. Nobody reads links. We know that.
Yeah, right.
That's what separated us. We wanted to write and then put the links in.
Yeah.
But we're different than most people.
Right. And, then we found out most people are getting their news from non-linked sources anyway. That's causing a lot of problems, but we seem to like those problems. So, yeah, I don't know. All right. Well, we still continue.
We're academics. We like to use the links as footnotes.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny.
check
'cause
the
I've never
appendix.
loved putting footnotes in anything.
What are you, a surgeon? No, I'm not a surgeon.
Okay. Pardon me. Okay. So, this whole thing reminded me of, I was telling you during the break, and I might as well mention it to everybody else. We had our our local school board.
That was a joke circulating on Twitter the other day, which I found pretty funny.
Which?
Surgeon says,
all right.
I'm taking out your appendix. You don't really need it. And
I
J.R.R.
don't.
Tolkien said, but that's where I explain why the dwarves hate the elves.
Editors and surgeons working together.
Yeah, well, not
For
compatible.
the
is what I'm
betterment
trying
of
to say.
all. Okay. Never mind. The whole thing. I was thinking about
We're into dad jokes here.
yesterday's school board meeting. Just all of what you have been telling everybody reminds me of how this stuff works in practice. And I
Tell
guess
us how it went.
well, it was very interesting because now I sort of think, well, this was inevitable in terms of getting people good information about what's happening. If the CDC doesn't do it, you think that's a huge disaster. But at some point, if you're not reading the CDC guidance and you depend on your local folks to give you their interpretation of, or even read you the CDC stuff directly, they may not do a good job either. And somebody was bound to screw this up, whether it was federal, state, or local. And our local folks working hard on things, I'm sure. But what came across in our webinar where parents could sign on and watch the various school board members tell us, how is school going to go next year? How's it going to work? They did a great job in reading us the PowerPoint slides that said, how many days a week will your child go to school if you opt for, there's two options, a hybrid model of 2 days in school and 3 days out, and the 100% distance learning, 5 days out of school. But this time it'll work better, we were told, and you got to choose by next Monday, although I think they now give us until Wednesday to make the choice and decide how we'll go to school. And then so people ask questions. Well, if you've been on a lot of webinars and a lot of remote meetings like that, you will know that 90% of the question and answer period is people asking for copies of the slide deck, which is, okay, whatever. That's probably familiar to you. But then I found that the local people who are supposed to be, intimately responsible, personally responsible, intimately familiar and personally responsible for the policy, likewise don't want to say the things that, say, Redfield and others who are trying to keep their jobs are supposed to be willing to say to do their jobs, but won't. So lots of time spent on things like, okay, well, what if a child gets sick or is diagnosed with COVID-19, or a teacher gets sick? What happens? And, that's a generalized question. What happens to my child? What happens to the other kids in the class? What happens to that classroom? What happens to that teacher? And they were only willing to say, well, you follow a physician's advice and self-isolate. But other people would say, to follow up, if a kid in my kid's class gets COVID-19, does my kid self-isolate even if he sits on the other side of the room from that other kid? and they would just say, again, follow a physician's advice. They just couldn't bring themselves to say, yes, if your kid is in class with this kid, and if he sits on the other side and is in scuba gear, he still has to self-isolate, because that's the policy, because that means school's going to be closing left and right all the time, and the kids that sign up for the hybrid program are going to have to go through 2-week self-isolation periods probably every time they go back to school, and your schools are effectively going to be closed again, and there's really no point in any of this. But if we told you that, then I don't know, we wouldn't be school board members anymore, I guess, and you'd be mad at us, and you'd just say, well, if that's the case, just close the schools. Except there's the president of the United States saying, to hell with that, just open the schools. And now saying, very overtly, through both directly and through Betsy DeVos, if you don't do it anyway, we will be withholding federal funds from your school system, from your state, from everything that we can do. And even where there's no direct authority to do it, they're just borrowing the authority from elsewhere, just like with the we can't force colleges to open, so we'll threaten the students, foreign students, and their visas. We now have, around here in Virginia, a very important part of school funding is federal impact aid. That is to say...
it's more than that. I mean, most foreign students, I don't know, I shouldn't say most, but many foreign students pay full freight.
Yes.
And so a lot of the universities make money off of them, and they love to have them. And you know, as USC has 25% foreign students, they said yesterday.
Is that right?
MIT and Harvard and the state of Massachusetts and the state of Connecticut are all suing the government over this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how far that's going to go, but it's a clear, heavy-handed, do as I wish you to do because it's good for my election kind of thing. And by the way, if it's cruel and hardship on foreign students, it's like a win-win for us.
Yeah, that's the point.
So it's amazing that they keep pulling this stuff, but it only has a certain limited impact. Now, that science article I sent you suggests that in the case of your school board, that kids are in a classroom and then considered a bubble, a cohort. Yeah. And so if one kid gets sick or turns positive, the entire class, whether you're sitting across the room or not, self-isolates for 14 days. But if you have high level of viral load in the community, what it will mean is that each bubble is going to therefore self-isolate, therefore schools are going to close.
Yeah. And so the upshot of it is, if you all are honest about who's got what and report it correctly and follow the guidance, schools will be closed a lot, even though we said they were open. Now, that might not affect the funding. I'm not really sure. But, we still have yet to figure out whether it will be sufficient in terms of keeping federal funding flowing to declare yourself open and then declare yourself immediately closed again. And we're all self-isolating for 6 months. And but we are open, technically. So the janitors are here, and the principal will open the place up, but everybody else is self-isolating 2 weeks at a time for a total of 8 months out of the year. And please give us the money. I don't know whether that's going to work or not, but that's essentially how it ends up. Schools are we're imagining that they're going to open, but if we really are asking people as classes and cohorts to self-isolate every time somebody registers a positive, we're just going to find schools are effectively closed, and that we would have been a lot better off just going to 100% distance learning, as difficult as that is. But that also means, nobody gets to go to work. That's true because virus, not because Democrats said it or politics intervened. Like you said, the virus is doing it. It's not anybody's choice. Or you could just say, to hell with it, we're all going to have it and die. And that seems to be the Trump choice, except for him, of course, because everybody who comes near him has to get a test. So, all right.
So that's the state of where things are. That takes us to the 10 o'clock hour, and soon, very soon, probably by 10:30, we'll start to hear a little bit about Mazars and the Congress trying to get information by subpoena, and then on the other hand, Cy Vance in New York State in a criminal situation trying to get information. I suspect that we win the criminal one and lose on the shielding because it's a Republican-dominated Supreme Court, which is incredibly political. But that would also mean that eventually we find out Trump's tax returns if it's in the criminal Cy-Vance case, but not until charges are brought, and therefore we won't find out in time for the election.
Oh, well, that would be disappointing.
That's my guess,
but
I don't know.
Yeah, why not?
Not a lawyer, not my area of expertise.
Good a guess as any at this point, and it's very likely that
I hope we win everything,
Sure.
but you never know.
Very likely, honestly, we very frequently find that cases for no good reason turn on, well, an election is coming, and so punt. Courts like to.
Yeah, Roberts
like
is real good at that.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to make big changes anyway, and he certainly doesn't like to influence the election, except if he's going to tip it anyway, it's going to be his way. But he'd like to do that in advance. He doesn't like to do it right beforehand.
All right. Well, we know what's coming down the pike, and this is going to be very interesting. I'll continue, I'm sure, the discussion of how ridiculous the school situation is, but we'll have to wait for the other side of that one. And then, it's Thursday, so we won't hear from you again until they screw up the schools more on Monday.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll have more to talk about.
Well,
by
yeah.
then. But in any case, take care, stay safe. Don't send your kids to school if you don't think it's safe. And the only way to get the economy going again and open is to actually do this properly, which we are not doing. And it's going to screw him in November, and we're going to win. And, that's the way it is.
Well, I guess we're just going to have to depend on
As
this.
Walter Cronkite used to like to say.
Well, that's true. That's the way it is. And it's the virus doing it, too. My own summation of it is we're not going to make it to the end of this thing, both of us, both you, Trump, and this country. So one of us has got to go, and
I thought you meant you and I.
Yeah.
One of us is going to go.
Yeah, that's right, and we're right, exactly right here.
We're
too.
friends and all, but if we have to choose, which one? I got your back. Yeah,
Okay.
Let me stand behind you. Is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, I have the. You have one
see
too.
it coming.
We have a hang-up button, and if you press it, the only one that goes is you. So it's not me making the choice. It's the system. It's the virus, Greg. Sorry about that. And you'll be cured by Monday. That's the good news. See you then. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. Yes, I have a comment here from Mike Musson, who tells me that the Fairfax County Schools, which is one of the largest school systems in the United States, I was not really aware of that until this situation came along, but found that to be true. And they say Fairfax County Schools have said that 3-foot separation is going to be the rule for them. Because why? Because we've all heard that 6-foot separation is what's necessary, and so therefore they're going to do 3 feet of separation. Now that's not why.
Academy of Pediatrics and
Yes.
WHO both say 3 feet is okay.
Yep,
Sorry.
they do. But you would like a radio show, clearly.
I didn't know if you knew.
Okay. Well, why would I not know? I'm reading it right now. But okay. Anyway, yeah. So they're going to the 3-foot separation. Now their reason for it in Fairfax County is they just say, well, we just don't have enough space to do 6 feet. Nobody does, of course, which is why we're all falling all over ourselves to alternate kids and cohorts in and out. But as it happens, they're relying on guidance, which it's interesting. We haven't really accepted here. And so, like, the one precaution we hear, what is going on back? Oh, it's boiling water time. Okay. But one thing that we have taken greater precautions with in the United States, among people who take precautions, that is that we have stuck with the 6-foot distancing rule, and we drummed it into everybody's heads. There are lots of people who are ignoring it or don't believe it's true or whatever. But apparently both the World Health Organization, which we're quitting, by the way, but also we should point out that apparently the even our declaration that we're leaving, Trump's foot stomping tantrum, we're quitting the WHO because reasons, has to do with all sorts of things and blaming China and basically deflecting blame for himself. We're going to leave, but it's effective in a year. So another one of those things where, purportedly would do well in reporting these things. We quit the World Health Organization. Well, it's effective July 1st, 2021. And of course, if Trump's not president and Joe Biden is, well, then I guess we probably won't be leaving the World Health Organization after all. And the whole thing was a mistake to report in the way it was reported. But a better way of taking that news away with you is to remind everybody, you're voting, and to the extent that we're having a free and fair election, whatever, this is up to you. Do you think it's a good idea to leave the World Health Organization? Because you can change the outcome. If you say, that's dumb, the United States should remain in the World Health Organization, then go and vote for Joe Biden, and then we will remain in the World Health Organization. This is a great opportunity for direct democracy. Unless, the election's not free and fair, in which case, to hell with all of you. Anyway, but the World Health Organization, for whatever reason, has decided that, and it might be because, look, we are, after all, the World Health Organization. There are many places in the world where, I could tell you 6 feet all day long. There's not 6 feet of room for you here. Bangladesh, everybody give each other 6 feet. Nope, not happening. So they say, well, could we ask you for 3 feet? You shouldn't be right on top of one another, breathing directly into one another's noses and mouths. How about 3 feet? And, it doesn't really work. But then again, neither does 6. I mean, if you've seen any of the camera footage with, I don't know, whether infrared camera or super slow-mo, high-definition cameras, where people cough, sneeze, or just have regular conversation, the droplets, and that's another term of art we have to deal with when we're talking about whether or not something is airborne or aerosolized, etc. But just regular respiratory droplets fairly frequently travel further than 6 feet. And if you're singing or yelling or screaming for whatever reason, including screaming for fun, as in an amusement park on a roller coaster, this brings us to another tangent. Apparently, everyone having great fun circulating the news on Twitter that the amusement parks, an amusement park, the amusement park directorate, I don't know, in Japan, apparently somebody gets a big kick out of the news that you are admonished, it's Japanese, asked politely not to scream on the roller coaster, but I guess in translation it comes out that you should be, please don't scream out loud, scream inside your heart, which everyone really loves that formulation. So anyway, whatever you're doing, even just generally speaking, you very frequently will eject those respiratory droplets further than 6 feet. But whatever, we can't tell people to stay 10 feet apart, so 6 feet. Why 6 feet? For the same reason that 15 minutes, in answer to Asparagus Zucchini's question the other day. It's a number, and it's a roundish number, and it's about the height of maybe the average height of men in America, and so people are somehow supposed to be able to translate that from, I understand what vertical height looks like and how it translates into horizontal distance. People not particularly good at that necessarily, but whatever, that's your fault, not mine. 3 feet, yardstick. Do people even know what it looks like anymore? I don't know. Kids don't know about yardsticks. They download them digitally. Doesn't make any sense. They've never seen any physical objects in their life. I don't know. So now they're going to do 3 feet. Both, but not just the World Health Organization, also the American Academy of Pediatrics, the AAP, which again only brings to mind for me the art card at the beginning of Looney Tunes cartoons, which, by the way, stands for Associated Artists Productions. I had to go look it up. But not the AARP, just straight old AAP, American Association of Pediatrics. I guess also going with the 3 foot thing. What their rationale for it, I don't know. I don't know if they're, it may not be driven by the situation in Bangladesh so much as, I don't know what. Maybe it's that continuing belief that kids somehow are less susceptible to contracting and transmitting the disease. That's sort of fallen apart bit by bit, but okay. Anyway, so Fairfax County is going with 3 feet. And also, he says, masks are not absolutely required due to age-appropriate considerations. The youngest kids, fidgety kindergartners, it is a little ridiculous to demand that they have a perfect masking protocol. But this too, well, first of all, Mike finishes up by saying this is for elementary schools. and not necessarily for the older kids in middle school and high school. What I got out of yesterday's webinar essentially was this question too was not one that they wanted to answer. People asked point blank, what happens if a kid shows up without a mask or refuses to wear a mask? What is the policy? What are you going to do? And I can't recall exactly how the vague answer that they gave, but essentially that they would have masks available at the schools and the kids would be provided with a mask or asked to wear a mask, but it didn't address the what about refusers? What are you going to do with them? And it struck me, of course, it's a different situation. We've been hearing about people who refuse to wear masks all along since they agreed to tell us to go ahead and wear masks. But those were people who refused to wear masks in settings where they wanted to be. It's a new twist on things when we send kids to school. If you found out, if the real policy was, well, if you don't wear a mask or you refuse to wear a mask, we're going to throw you out and send you back home. Well, some kids, of course, would say, but it's not fair. I forgot my mask. My mom didn't put it in my lunchbox. And they'd cry. And then are you really going to send that kid home? And probably we'd find outrageous news stories printed all over the place in our local papers and in our viral tweets and everything about the poor kid who got sent home when all they wanted to do was learn because their mask was not in their lunchbox or the mask didn't hold up the standards, and in all likelihood it would turn out to be one of the students of color too. And so and I do think that'll make a big difference in things too, especially when you're talking about older kids who might refuse to wear a mask for whatever reason, and you'll probably run into, well, whether they refused or forgot the mask. Well, this is just a good kid who something, and they're here to learn, i.e. white kid, and it's just fine, and we'll all be careful for the day, and everybody wash your hands an extra time. Whereas, this kid's intentionally provoking the authorities, and guess what? That's the student of color who is intentionally pushing the teacher's buttons by not wearing a mask. I'm sure we'll see lots of that. But on top of all of this, you know what to do, and you don't feel bad about people who show up in Costco without a mask, and then you say, the policy is you got to have a mask, and so we're not going to sell you groceries. And they curse at you and scream and all that, and it turns into a viral video, et cetera, et cetera. But in the end, it's you who normally would want that person as a customer but are not willing to endanger everybody versus that customer who wants to be there. What do you do when it's kids who say, I just found out that they'll let me go home for the day and even give me a ride if I say I forgot my mask? Mom did put my mask in my lunchbox. I just don't want to be here even though I only have to come twice a week. I mean, I guess we're supposed to be assuming that the kids are craving social contact so much, we just got to open the schools. It's terrible for them if we don't. Well, they're craving social contact. It's true. But I assume at some point we revert to the mean where kids start saying, oh, I don't want to go to school today, even though I only have to go twice. And if all you have to do is, oops, my mask flew out the bus window on the way to school, free ride home. Not that anybody was saying that they were going to offer the kids free rides home. I'm sure it's the parents have to come and pick you up, and then the parents get furious with you. I put that mask in your lunchbox. What the hell are you talking about? And then you'll have moms having to show the kids the video on their Ring doorbells of me handing you the mask. I told you. We're going to have all sorts of problems. But essentially what they're saying is, with kids having limited opportunity to even be in school, no, we're not going to throw kids out for not having masks. And they wouldn't even say, well, we reserve the right to do so, but we're going to try to avoid it. They just said, we're going to follow the rules. And if everybody just follows the rules, it'll be fine. Well, of course, that's never been reality, though. Anyway, so your mileage may vary, of course, because every school system is coming up with its own version of this thing. As for us, we're going to have to decide until by next Wednesday, whether to do the, all right, we'll run the risk or run the risk for somebody else with 2 days a week in school and 3 days a week out. But as it turns out, this time around, they're saying that if you opt for the 100% distance learning option, that the online component of the schooling will be, as the new terminology calls it, synchronous learning. That you will be, instead of, as they handed us in the last quarter of the school year, online learning means your teachers are going to email you PDFs of what we used to call ditto sheets back in the old days, of a Xeroxed worksheet, and you got to print it out and fill it out at home and then scan it and send it back to me. Or sometimes they figured out the technology that would allow you to answer the questions online. But you go do this thing, and at some point before midnight on Friday, send it to me. And that really was not working for us. That was asynchronous learning. And now synchronous learning, which I thought was what online schooling was supposed to be about, where at 9 o'clock a.m., the science teacher logs on to whatever, a Zoom meeting, and all the kids show up there. And if your kid's face doesn't show up on the screen, you get marked absent. And then the history teacher, well, did I say it was a science class? Damn, I can't even remember what class I have at 9 a.m. The teacher gives the lecture that they ordinarily give, and we don't think of it necessarily as a lecture in middle school or high school, but they present their lesson plan, and the kids doze off, as they often do in class anyway, and then there's a quiz on Friday. And on Friday at 9, they show up, and a little application would maybe, I don't know, pop up on their screen. I don't know. They can do magical things with the internet. Something pops up on your screen. If you can take a quiz to find out what Lord of the Rings character you are, I think you can take a quiz on what they taught you in the last 20 minutes, right? You should be able to figure out the technology for that. And if not, then ask the kids what Lord of the Ring character they are and grade them on that. Just give them something to do. After all, we don't care about their education. We just want them out of our hair so we can all go to work. Or something like that. I don't know. Maybe a bad idea for reopening the schools was to make the guy who said, "I love the poorly educated," be the one in charge, calling the shots on how we'll educate our children. But somehow we have gotten to that point. I don't know how we're going to deal with this. All right. More organized thoughts have been tucked away for us in Pocket, and some of which I filed in the Twitter feed as well. Let's see what we've got here to share with people. There's an awful lot. Yes, let's see. All right, we got to those things. I said yesterday, and I think maybe when you heard it, you said, "What? That's not true. That's inexplicable that you would say such a thing." I think I just casually, in making a joke about New Hampshire, which is always a funny place, I had said that maybe viral prevalence was not that high in New Hampshire because everybody's a state legislator and they're all presumably hoarding the tests for themselves and staying safe from the virus in the same way that Donald Trump does. But as it turns out, it's not a rarity that state legislators could get the virus. Maybe not in New Hampshire, but certainly in Mississippi, where you might imagine they would have such problems because you have prejudices about Mississippi and you should just admit it. Here's the story from Jackson, Mississippi, where they keep their capital. COVID hits more legislators amid rapid spread in Mississippi. Makes sense, right? That's where they are. That's where the virus is. The two got together, and you know what happens next. At least 26 legislators and 10 others who work at Mississippi's capital have tested positive for the coronavirus, a public health official said Wednesday, as the governor implored residents to take precautions amid a rapid rise in confirmed cases statewide. The 174-member legislature ended its annual session July 1st, and many people in the capital did not wear masks or maintain distance between themselves and others during the last few weeks. Lieutenant Governor Delbert, I think we've called his name before. Is it Hosemann? Hosemann, like Hoseman, or does he have some weird pronunciation of it? Well, Delbert and the House Speaker, Philip Gunn, which is also a likely name for a Mississippi legislator. Hosemann, what's his name? Hosemann and Gunn. It's a good buddy cop show, are among those who publicly acknowledge testing positive for COVID-19. They are now quarantined at home. The number of people infected at the Capitol could actually be higher, but we're not testing them because then we'll find out that we have it, right? That's the president at work. The reported number only reflects those who were tested recently in Jackson, said the state's top public health official, Dr. Thomas Dobbs. Some legislators have also been tested since returning to their hometowns. You'll find out more about them, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks. But there you have it. 26 legislators and 10 others. I am seeing reports all over the place from college football teams returning to training camp, the 20, 30, 50 of the people involved, not just players, but trainers, coaches, assistants of various kinds, coming down with COVID-19. So I don't really know what we expected from this, but apparently it's a real thing that's happening. I noticed that Jim Jordan was tweeting yesterday, things that ought to happen here in America, just baseless, like, I wish this was real. And saying, for summer barbecues and swimming pools should be open and college football should be happening. And there you have it. Once again, Jim Jordan exhibiting his habit of failing to look out for the safety of college students. No surprise there, of course. He's the guy that let all of his wrestlers be molested by the team doctor and now denies knowing anything about it. And now what does he want to do with our college football players? Our beautiful, precious college football players, America, are all catching COVID-19 because he's insisting, I want to see them smash each other in the brain come fall. So let's get on it, America, shall we? Always looking out for the safety of the kids. He's a great man, really. We ought to put a statue up for him. All right, let's see. Other stories that we should run through. Oh, who sent me this one? I did see this come through, and I don't think I saved the tweet where I got it, and now I can't give credit, but I think you were listening to the show, and so now you'll have to pat yourself on the back. But by all means, if you think it was you, step up and say so. No shame in it. Why not give you the credit? Here's another fun thing we have to worry about with COVID-19, all the unknowns of the disease. I think this came up in context. Oh, and now I know I have a way to trace this back and find out who sent it, but I'll have to do it during the break. But here's bad and scary news, and I think this was sent to me in the context of, maybe this is happening to Trump. You kept saying he's secretly got COVID-19. Maybe this is a problem for him. Brain damage and hallucinations associated with even mild COVID-19 coronavirus infection. Yikes. How trustworthy is it? It's in Forbes magazine. Now, that's not a place that I'm used to saying, well, that's fake news about, but it's also not a place I'd go for my medical information either, but I'll bet they cite something better than themselves. Victoria Forster, the contributor for healthcare at Forbes magazine. It'll be on you, Victoria, to show us what your sources are on this. But let's scare the crap out of everybody one more time. A new study has warned that potentially deadly brain disorders may be a symptom of COVID-19, even in people with otherwise mild disease. Well, that's it. Let's all send ourselves off for... we're doomed. Let's all get off the planet. Oh, more notes coming in here. Greg says 7-2 for the decision in the Vance case. For Vance. So I can't remember what the posture of the Vance case was, but that's the criminal investigation going on in the state of New York. Alito and Thomas, the two. Brian Monroe having ventured to guess that it was Thomas and Kavanaugh. So you got the Thomas right. That's like the free space on the bingo card, if you ask me. Not that it wasn't a good guess, Brian, but okay. Alito and Thomas. You could take it or leave it. Alito, Kavanaugh, two sides of the same coin there. Okay, so not a bad guess. Now, back to your brain damage, everybody. Are you ready for this? The research published today in the journal Brain. That's a journal. That's a real, I don't know, it's linked, so it must be real, right? I've never heard of it, but that's because it's about brains. The research published yesterday, I suppose, in the journal Brain looked at 40 adult patients with COVID-19 in the UK, finding that they showed symptoms of a wide range of serious brain diseases. Of course, a lot of people in the UK, for instance, would have mad cow disease as a result of being British, essentially. I know that's a serious thing, right? And I think when you go to donate blood, they actually ask you about your travel history. For a while there, anyway, the last time I contemplated it, and maybe I should check again to see if it's changed, but they asked you if you spent any significant amount of time in the UK during the 80s, they would be worried about, possible lingering mad cow disease infection. And I guess I fit with that. So that's the reason my show is so disjointed. But there you go. Anyway, so another brain disease for the British. Congratulations. Many of the patients had only mild, typical COVID-19 symptoms such as fever or respiratory issues, and for some, their neurological symptoms were the only sign they were sick. And that's kind of scary, right? If you started to have some of these things, COVID-19 wouldn't be what comes immediately to mind. But now you can reassure yourself, no, not, schizophrenia or some psychotic break, but COVID-19. That's all. Well, let's read more about this. One 55-year-old woman with no known current or historical mental illnesses was admitted to hospital, see, very British here, with recognized COVID-19 symptoms, including fever, cough, and muscle aches. She was discharged after 2 weeks, having been treated with oxygen, but 4 days later, her husband reported she was confused and behaving strangely, and not just because she was British, but in a different way, right? She's spelling words like color and honor in crazy ways. We got to check this thing out. No, bigger than that. She then experienced hallucinations, like this is the correct way to spell color, and I should be driving on this side of the road. This is serious stuff, reported seeing lions and monkeys in her house, which a lot of people would think of as a very fun thing. And it brought me immediately to mind of President Trump's cognition test, his mental acuity test, which he passed with flying colors. Are you sure you saw this? Yes, that is absolutely the hallucination I saw. Well, you're healthy. That's a lion. Well, okay. Lions and monkeys in her house. She became delusional and aggressive with her family and hospital staff. That could be Trump. She was treated with antipsychotic medication, and her symptoms improved over the course of 3 weeks, although the study does not confirm whether she made a full recovery. I think I would like to follow up on this one woman, please. Couldn't we not get follow up on, you had COVID-19, and what were your results? I saw lions and monkeys in the house, and I was psychotic. How did that come out? I'll tell you later. Please, don't publish until you... Anyway, other neurological issues experienced by the COVID-19 patients, who ranged in age from 16 to 85, included more cases of delirium or psychosis, strokes, and problems with peripheral nerves found in extremities like hands and feet. Those are our extremities. Like hands and feet. Like or as hands and feet. You can just say it directly. It's in the hands and feet. Particularly worryingly, this is a very British sentence, 9 patients were diagnosed with a form of acute, demyelinating, I got it, encephalomyelitis. Wow, I think I got the words right. Acute demyelinating. Myelinating is a word I've learned before. But demyelinating is not what you want to be doing. Encephalomyelitis, or ADEM. This is a recognized thing, where the immune system is thought to attack myelin, the insulating covering of nerves in the central nervous system. If myelin is absent or not thick enough, this is where you want to be thick in the brain. If myelin is absent or not thick enough, nerves lose the ability to effectively transmit information, and a wide range of symptoms, including paralysis and cognitive issues, can result. ADEM is rare, thankfully, but when it is diagnosed, it is almost always found in children after viral infections, not seen in adults as in this study. Very interesting. A 47-year-old woman experienced a week of typical COVID-19 symptoms, but then experienced neurological problems and was diagnosed with ADEM. Her brain eventually became so swollen that surgeons had to remove a part of her skull to relieve the pressure. Yikes. Dr. Michael Zandi, consultant neurologist from University College London Hospitals and one of the senior authors of the paper, posted about the work on Twitter, saying that the next steps were research on the causes and treatments of neurological involvement and surveillance and epidemiology, requiring a global collaborative effort. So we're out of that one. The United States will be of no help to it whatsoever, I'm sure. It's not the first time there's been neurological symptoms described, but perhaps we'll have to wait for the other side of that to conclude. We'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I know you were waiting for the conclusion of this exciting story, and I probably could have shoehorned it in if I had stopped digressing. But this is the end of the story here. It's not the first time that neurological symptoms have been described in COVID-19 patients. But a new study provides vital new information. The new study provides vital new information as to the large spectrum of different brain diseases that can be caused by infection with the old name for this. Remember, the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. The UK has a surveillance program called CoroNerve, C-O-R-O, Nerve, CoroNerve, where physicians can report neurological symptoms of COVID-19 with the hopes of better understanding the effect of the coronavirus on the brain. In recent weeks, there have been growing concerns that the pandemic may leave some COVID-19 survivors with chronic health conditions. Although serious neurological complications are seemingly rare, the study authors warn that they may be long-lasting and require further research. So, okay, well, that's sort of an unexciting conclusion, but probably the scientifically sound one. But let's just have all teachers, because who cares about their brains, and all students, because who cares about their brains, risk the same thing. How fun would that be? What a fantastic step forward. All right, let's see. More tweets about what's going on in the various cases. So it looks like am I seeing this right? I can't get anybody definitively to say this. It's all disjointed conversations. Everyone's looking at their preferred decisions. Oh, there's Armando. Perhaps I can check in with what Armando has in his written product. These decisions today are absolutely horrible. To no one's surprise, he thinks they're absolutely horrible. Justices signed on, the liberal justices that signed on to them, it's absolutely terrible. No Republican president will ever cooperate with a congressional investigation. Democratic presidents will. Congressional oversight has been irretrievably broken. So I guess what was gone on here is Greg's prediction was a correct one. The criminal cases being investigated and pursued in New York State can proceed, but the subpoenas from Congress to the president for various information relating both to his own finances and I guess probably pretty much any congressional investigation seeking testimony from executive branch officials. Apparently, they're just saying, yeah, the courts below that upheld the congressional subpoenas have failed to adequately account for separation of powers issues. And no, basically this is a thing that they've been punting forever, but I guess now they have to come to a decision. The Supreme Court saying, no, the Congress is not allowed to bother the very busy television-watching, golf-playing president because he could be distracted from everything. I don't know whether they get down to the brass tacks where the theory used to be, well, he could be distracted from issues of vital national security. But we also just found out the other day that he was unreachable on the golf course for 3 hours to undo his supposedly accidental or underinformed racist tweeting. But we couldn't get through to him because, he's on the golf course. So, as you know, people don't answer the phone on golf course, including presidents. And so therefore, remember, you can't subpoena him because then he'll be distracted for a 4th hour from something important. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Armando is entirely right. But, this is something that we have been predicting this since forever, or at least certainly I have, although for a while he disagreed with me because there was a time when he thought, no, that's ridiculous. There'll be even though he was a realist and about the insistence at the Supreme Court level of predetermining your outcomes, I guess he, for longer than I did, thought that courts would uphold the obvious and implicit right of a co-equal branch to investigate and balance and check and balance the other powers of the other branches. The answer is no. We are presidential supremacists in this country unless a Democrat is president, in which case you can do whatever you want from wherever you want. Launch the attacks from wherever you like. All right. We'll get back on track on this, and I guess maybe we'll spend Friday taking a look back at these things when the decisions have been better digested and analyzed, because it's hard to do it on the fly. They don't even do it well on CNN. So we won't endeavor to do it. We can look back at some other things, like, for instance, Hunter covering for Daily Kos, the rounding up the new surge of stories pointing out for us that as we head into coronavirus spike or wave, let's say 1.1, rather than saying a second wave, we are going to be woefully underprepared for the actual second wave if it presents itself as a distinct wave. We hinted at this the other day, that we temporarily staved off the worst of the shortages of PPE for hospitals, but we never really solved the problem. And that was because we put a bunch of pirates and privateers and profiteers in charge of fixing the problem. And all they did was they were able to extort a high enough price to make the pirates happy with their profits so that they would turn over a limited amount of PPE to hospitals, enough that the nurses could stop wearing garbage bags for the time being, but not enough that they would have to be able to stop reusing their N95 masks, et cetera, et cetera. And they were like, fine, I don't have to wear garbage bags. We can stop complaining about that. We're clearly not going to get any help from the federal government, so we can just stop complaining and start, get back to treating patients the best we can. And things are slowing down here in New York, and pretty soon it'll be other people's problems, and let those nurses complain about things once it's their turn. Jared Kushner did nothing to fix the problem. He delivered enough that nurses didn't just continue to, they didn't drop dead in garbage bags. They dropped dead in gowns, and that people figured, all right, well, the visual says that we've solved the PPE problem. As it turns out, we haven't, and we're not ready for wave 1.1, let alone wave 2.0. Masks and other protective equipment running low again as pandemic hospitalizations surge, summarizes Hunter. 2 weeks ago, we were told that the Trump administration was allegedly attempting to replenish basic medical supplies in the strategic national stockpile, building up supplies of masks and other equipment before an expected fall second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're pointing here to an earlier story that Hunter had written saying Team Trump says it's trying to replenish emergency stockpiles, but the details are still dodgy. So he does the right thing with the headline here. It doesn't use the word purportedly, but he does, with different words, gets the same effect. Team Trump says it's trying to replenish stockpiles, but details are still dodgy, meaning we shouldn't believe them because we should never believe them about anything. And look, it turns out that he was right. The not terribly urgent seeming stockpile effort, however, was based on a few key Trump team assumptions. One, they were planning to build up a, quote, 90-day supply of medical equipment based on the worst 30 days of the pandemic so far, meaning so far as in the first pandemic peak in April and May. And two, it would take until October to get that 90-day supply, assuming nothing happened in, say, July, like right now, to screw up those plans. Yeah. Oops. The Associated Press is now reporting that protective equipment, such as masks, is running low again as cases in hospitals in Arizona, Texas, California, Florida, and most places between escalate in an exponential fashion. The president of National Nurses United told AP that there are still shortages of gowns, masks, and other equipment, and nurses are still being told to reuse them. And the Trump official in charge, supposedly, of procuring those supplies told Congress, and this is, I guess, someone other than Jared now, told Congress only last week that a quarter of U.S. states have less than a 30-day supply. Any casual look at the latest charts shows that the pandemic has now escalated far above what officials were counting as the worst scenario back in June, and it's looking increasingly unlikely that the strategic national stockpile isn't going to be needed on a large scale before October. For those of you in the back rows, as he says, that means we're boned. So, yeah, pretty much true. But Jared's friends could presumably get lucky and make a fortune because, I don't know, I guess they already have the supply chains to import the stuff from where? From China, and resell it to us at 3 times what they paid for it, 5 times, 8 times what they paid for it. And we've done nothing about getting on the stick and producing it here in the United States because, I don't know, crisis avoided. We stopped hearing about it in the newspapers, and so therefore I, as president, don't have to do anything. Time to play golf, where you won't be able to reach me for national security issues. Gotta go. All right, let's see. Kate Sherrill sends me the NPR politics summation, quick summation of the Vance case. The Supreme Court has ruled that President Trump is not, quote, categorically immune from having his financial records released to a New York grand jury. That's the 7-2 decision there. We'll get more detail about how the other cases went, I guess, in the day ahead. All right. Let's see. Other quick scan of Pocket to see what other things I need to share with you. That seems like maybe less important. I'm just sort of flipping through all these things here. Oh, yes, we mentioned to you that the White House is back on the hydroxychloroquine kick and that they want a do-over at the FDA or wherever they sent off the shuffled off the last study that didn't come back favorably to them. Whoever it was that did that study that found that hydroxychloroquine actually kind of sucked and was certainly not effective and might even kill more people than it helps, that was clearly wrong. What are they basing this on? They don't have to base it on anything. They can just say whatever they want. But they like, their play is they like to grab something and cherry pick or take some kernel of truth out of a thing and then say, this is now generally applicable, like with the American Academy of Pediatrics saying, it's safe to go back to school if you're safe about it. But what if you're not safe about it? Well, then it's not safe to go back. Oh, shut up, doc. They said this part. It's safe to go back to school. So here we go. Here's the kernel of truth. In Stat News, where we've gone a couple times before, a flawed COVID-19 study gets the White House's attention, and the FDA may pay the price. So now that's the next maybe sort of kind of trusted institution to be destroyed in all this. Although I don't know that the FDA really rose to the level of respect that the CDC had. Lots of people have trouble with them. Matthew Herper, writing for Stat, tells us studies in thousands of people on multiple continents now show the malaria drug hydroxychloroquine does not help patients hospitalized with COVID-19 live longer. But on Tuesday, the White House, based on a new study, and it's linked here, and it's in, where? Well, it's linked. You go find it. I'll tell you. A new study that outsiders greeted with deep skepticism disagreed. Now, the Food and Drug Administration, again, risks being pulled into an ugly political fracas, I'll give it that pronunciation, over whether to permit more patients to be treated with the drug. It is a debate that threatens to undermine the agency's credibility when it needs it perhaps more than ever. The FDA cannot afford another misstep if it wants to maintain credibility with the American people, which is going to be so essential when doing a broad vaccine program. Should we identify a safe and effective vaccine for COVID, said Luciana Borio, who served as the FDA's acting, that's right, I forgot about our little thing there. Acting chief scientist from 2017 to 2019. So yes, during the Trump administration, but then couldn't take it anymore or was fired. I don't know exactly how she exited from this situation. But there you have it. And a great point here. It's the FDA that's going to be doing the approval of any coronavirus vaccine that they come up with. And if you let people know that the FDA has been so politicized that it cannot be trusted, and then say, but don't worry, you should take this brand new vaccine about which we know next to nothing because the FDA says it's safe, you're going to have a whole new generation of anti-vaxxers on your hands. At the root of the conflict is the fundamental principle that the FDA uses to evaluate drugs. So that's pretty bad. Decisions are based almost entirely on what is known as a randomized controlled trial, in which patients are randomly assigned to receive a treatment or not. Other types of studies have, again and again, failed to deliver accurate information about the medicine's benefits and risks, and are used sparingly in making medical decisions. 3 randomized studies have now shown no benefit for hydroxychloroquine in hospitalized patients. The study that sparked the latest controversy was anything but randomized. Not only was it not randomized, outside experts noted, but patients who received hydroxychloroquine were also more likely to get steroids, which appear to help very sick patients with COVID-19. That is likely to have influenced the central finding of the Henry Ford study, that death rates were 50% lower among patients in hospitals treated with hydroxychloroquine, but also with steroids. So we don't know what's producing the result. That's the answer. Why don't they study the steroids? I don't know. We've heard all the suspicions. Trump's invested in hydroxychloroquine. I don't know. Don't know what the answer is, but they gotta have the hydroxychloroquine. Don't know. Maybe they hate fish tanks. On Monday, President Trump, who has long been enthusiastic, that's a nice way of putting it, about hydroxychloroquine, and even took the drug himself, purportedly, I think he was lying, tweeted about the results, saying that Democrats had politicized the drug and that the FDA should act now. The president's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, told reporters that Henry Ford had asked the FDA to issue a new emergency use authorization for the drug. The agency had previously revoked hydroxychloroquine's authorization on June 15th based on evidence it was not effective. Experts were taken aback by the developments. The medical community has come to the inescapable conclusion that hydroxychloroquine is not effective at treating COVID-19 infections, said Stephen Nissen, a cardiologist at the Cleveland Clinic and longtime clinical trialist. Peter Navarro is not a scientist. He is the president's trade representative. He should not be advising the public on matters of health. Nissen and Borio say observational studies simply cannot be used to determine whether a medicine is effective. Again and again, they have been wrong. In one famous example, estrogen replacement therapy after menopause was thought to have benefits in preventing heart and other problems. Large studies showed this was not the case. In another, a knee surgery for arthritis was shown to have no benefits over medical care. A paper that showed that hydroxychloroquine was potentially harmful, which was published in The Lancet in May, was met with similar criticism. It was eventually withdrawn. So the same standards that got the anti-hydroxychloroquine study in the Lancet canceled, to use the current lingo, apply to the Henry Ford study, but F that, it's pro-hydroxychloroquine, so we're all for it. Observational studies are often used to decide what ideas to test in randomized studies to make sure that the results from randomized studies translate to the real world and to detect side effects. But puzzlingly, Henry Ford, that I guess is the institution, not the actual Henry Ford, he's dead, hydroxychloroquine notwithstanding, has applied for authorization to use hydroxychloroquine, quote, for a clearly defined list of clinical uses, including in clinical trials, the system said in a statement. We owe it to our patients and to our communities to do everything we can to provide safe, effective, affordable treatments, and we will continue to collaborate toward meaningful solutions that address this deadly disease. Evidence that hydroxychloroquine does not help hospitalized patients, the use in its original emergency use authorization, which was designed to allow doctors to access a national stockpile of the drugs, is mounting. One study, the recovery study conducted in the UK, compared 1,542 patients on a particularly high dose of the drug to 3,132 control patients and found no difference in how long the patients lived. A second, conducted by the National Institutes of Health, also found no benefit from hydroxychloroquine at higher doses. Yet, in his interview with the White House press pool, Navarro argued that the studies were, so far, based on bad science, and that the Henry Ford data were evidence enough. He argued that the drug appears to work when given earlier in the disease course than it was in the large randomized studies. He said that rescinding the FDA authorization had a tremendously negative effect on two things. One is the ability for the American people to use this medicine to protect themselves, Navarro said, and two, the ability for hospitals like the Detroit hospital system to recruit patients for the kind of randomized blind clinical trials that everybody wants to settle once and for all the questions of efficacy and safety. It is not clear how the FDA's decision to rescind the emergency authorization for hydroxychloroquine affected either. Doctors can prescribe any drug for any use, and conducting a clinical trial requires a different type of approval from the FDA. It is clear that granting a new emergency use authorization based on an observational study would go against decades of experience by medical researchers and regulators around the globe. A huge amount of scientific attention has been focused on hydroxychloroquine, and analysis Monday by Stat and Applied XL, a computational journalism company, found that 1 in 6 clinical trials started for COVID-19 involved hydroxychloroquine or a similar drug, chloroquine. Said Nissen, the sooner we stop talking about hydroxychloroquine, the sooner we can focus attention on more promising therapies. Well, there you have it. So what's the Trump solution? More hydroxychloroquine studies, please. Let's see. More COVID-19 news. Just thought I would note this one for the record. I think we can get it across in the headline and maybe a paragraph or two. From the Hill, New Jersey to require masks outdoors. I've been wondering about that. Around here, we just don't have that much population density or not compared to some places, viral density either. And I've always wondered, should I be wearing a mask everywhere all the time outside of the house? And I've been assured that it's not necessary, but now New Jersey's going the opposite direction. Of course, they have things different. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy announced Wednesday that the state will require facial coverings for all outdoor settings where social distancing is not possible, building on an earlier order that required face masks for indoor public spaces. There's no question that face coverings are game changers. There's that term again. I think we were the first state in America to require them indoors. They've been strongly recommended out of doors. We're going to turn that up a notch today and say we're going to ask you, if you can't socially distance, then it's going to be required, Murphy told MSNBC's Morning Joe. New Jersey was an early hotspot for the virus along with New York, but despite a recent decline in cases What does this read? But despite a recent decline in cases, its infection rate hit a 10-week high this week, according to NBC New York. New Jersey has required masks indoors since April. Murphy conceded the new mandate would be hard to enforce, particularly in heavily trafficked areas like the Jersey Shore. but said rising cases in other states had forced his hand. He cited the peak of the state's coronavirus outbreak in April and said New Jersey, quote, can't go through that hell again. And they certainly shouldn't. So, okay, very interesting to see the move to outdoor masking requirements. Don't know how they'll enforce it, but he says it might be impossible to enforce, but let's try it. Why not? Let's see. Oh, this will probably never fit in the few minutes that we have left here, but let's add this from the Hill. I did grab this just by way of establishing, yes, it's not just me imagining or hearing from my wife, who tells me that she's reading it, that Trump is threatening school funding. Here we've got some direct link for you, for those of you who are waiting for that. Trump rips CDC, threatens school funding. This is, of course, what happened day before yesterday, I believe, but being rounded up finally in the Hill here by Brett Samuels and Jesse Hellman, of mayonnaise fame, apparently. President Trump on Wednesday threatened to cut off federal funding for schools if they do not resume in-person learning this fall and criticized the top government health agency for being too tough with its guidelines to aid in that process. The Dems think it would be bad for them politically if U.S. schools open before the November election, but it is important for the children and families. May cut off funding if not open, Trump tweeted. So, of course, it's very important for children to learn in school. Therefore, I may cut off funding if I don't like what's going on. So it's really not that important, is it? Anyway, we know the story behind it. I just thought I would add it by way of putting a link to it in case any of you are writing papers on the question. Here's something that will take longer than we have left to read, but isn't very, very important. So it's okay. We'll throw it in there. And is this the old one? Yeah, it is. So that was... I meant to find this is a piece that I meant to have accompany the slightly more important take on this thing. It's in here somewhere. I'm gonna have to scroll to find it, but there was now I'm not finding it. An article recently about essentially, to no one's surprise, nepotism in the Trump White House. Here it is. A common thread among Trump press staffers. They're related to other Trump staffers. This was in the Washington Post a couple of days ago. The accompanying piece that I put away is actually from back in February in the New York Times, a similar piece entitled Young Conservative and Working for Trump. The dating pool is small. And then noting the marriage, say, between Stephen Miller and Katie Waldman. We've ejected her from the Waldman crowd. She's a Miller now. I thought that was interesting alongside this new piece. Not about marriages per se, but about the way jobs are distributed. This is interesting. Paul Farhi put this one together. And this one is a couple days ago, too, June 23rd. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany hired a familiar face last month to join her communications staff. Before she chose him to serve as her principal assistant press secretary, Chad Gilmartin, his name is actually Chad, had worked with McEnany on President Trump's re-election campaign. But the connections go even deeper. Gilmartin happens to be a cousin of Sean Gilmartin, who happens to be McEnany's husband. Landing a White House job is a highly competitive sport, and who manages to get those jobs has always been a subject of fascination. And in the Trump White House, being a relative of someone with a big administration job seems to be the one crucial advantage. Family connections through marriage or direct blood ties turn up in several places among the people who are in charge of communicating the Trump administration's agenda or involved in his re-election effort. And I guess it makes sense, given that back in February we learned about their weird dating circles. For example, let's just throw one in here before we wrap things up. Giovanna Coya, a member of the White House press staff until last month, for whatever reason, is a cousin of the White House senior counselor Kellyanne Conway. Coya, who was promoted to deputy director of the Office of Public Liaison, recently married John, see if you can make the connection here, John Pence. Pence, Vice President Pence's nephew. The younger Pence is a senior advisor to the Trump re-election campaign. The Public Liaison Office which the White House describes as the primary line of communication between the White House and the public, also employs, of course, Andrew Giuliani, son of Rudolph W. Giuliani, Trump's personal attorney. The younger Giuliani earns $95,000 a year as an associate director, according to White House personnel documents. His job, you'll love this one, is to coordinate visits to the White House by championship sports teams, which isn't even happening anymore because coronavirus. But what the hell? Here's $95,000 for you anyway. Now you love your dad. Things have changed for Andrew Giuliani. That's good. Laura Schlapp. Believe it or not, another Schlapp. A newly hired public affairs specialist at the Pentagon is the niece of Mercedes Schlapp, the former White House Director of Strategic Communications, and Matt Schlapp, the chairman of the American Conservative Union. Mercedes Schlapp left her White House position last June to become senior advisor to Trump's reelection campaign. That's not a move at all. And then, of course, there's Katie Miller and Stephen Miller. There's more, of course, out there. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, of course, daughter of Mike Huckabee. More and more here. We're not going to get through all of these things, and they compare them to other administrations. But guess what? This one's the worst of all. You'll hear more about how much worse they are than everybody else as you stay tuned for Justice Putnam's West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We've got a lot on tap for you. Let's see. The guy who sides with Nazis and whose lawyer argued in court that his viewers, quote, don't expect him to report on the facts, picked on the wrong wounded and heavily decorated first female combat pilot by calling her a coward.
From
You know who
Daily
that
Kos
is.
Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show.
With David Waldman.
That, of course, Tucker Carlson and Tammy Duckworth. The Commerce Department Inspector General seeking information on 2 census hirings that are clearly corrupt. The TSA has improved coronavirus protection for airport screeners and travelers after a whistleblower complaint. And higher education is pushing back as Harvard and MIT sue to block the ICE rule on international students.